A few years ago, two students started learning English on the same day. Both had the same goal. Both were equally motivated. Both studied every day, but one of them became fluent. The other is still struggling. The other has yet to achieve fluency. Why? Was one of them smarter? No. Did one have better teachers? No. The difference was something much simpler. One student learned English the right way. The other didn't. In today's video, I'm going to show you the exact principles that separate successful English learners from struggling learners. And if you stay until the end, you may discover why your English progress has been slower than you expected. Before I share the first tip, let's go back to those two students. Both were hardworking. Both spent time learning English. But one of them focused on studying English. The other focused on using English. And that small difference changed everything. The first student spent hours memorizing vocabulary. The second student spent time reading, listening, and using English every day. The first student wanted perfect English. The second student wasn't afraid of making mistakes. A year later, one could confidently hold conversations. The other was still waiting to feel ready. And this brings us to the first tip. A tip that can completely change your English journey. Tip number 1. Stop learning English word by word. Start learning English in chunks. Most learners make the same mistake. They learn words like decision, advice, opportunity, experience. And then they wonder why speaking feels difficult. The reason is simple. Native speakers don't speak in single words. They speak in groups of words. For example, instead of learning the word decision, learn the phrase make a decision. Instead of learning advice, learn give advice. Instead of learning experience, learn, gain experience. Now, notice what happens. When you learn phrases, your brain doesn't have to build sentences from scratch. You already have ready-made pieces of English. And that's exactly how fluent speakers speak. They don't create every sentence word by word. They use patterns they've heard thousands of times. So, from today, stop collecting words. Start collecting phrases. This one habit alone can dramatically improve your fluency. Now, you might be wondering, where can I find these phrases? How can I learn them naturally? The answer brings us to tip number 2. And in my opinion, this is one of the most underrated English learning methods in the world. Tip number 2. Read graded readers. Most learners make a huge mistake. They try to read books that are far above their level. They open a novel, read one sentence, then stop to check 3 difficult words. A few minutes later, they feel tired, frustrated, and eventually they quit. But successful learners do something different. They read books they can actually understand. This is where graded readers become powerful. Graded readers are books written especially for English learners. The vocabulary is controlled. The grammar is simpler. And the stories are easy to follow. Imagine reading a book and understanding almost everything. Instead of feeling confused, you feel confident. Instead of translating every sentence, you simply enjoy the story. And when that happens, your brain starts learning English naturally, without stress, without pressure, without memorizing long vocabulary lists. In fact, many language experts believe that reading easy material is far more effective than struggling with difficult material, because every page gives your brain more exposure to natural English. You see useful phrases again and again. You notice grammar patterns naturally, and your vocabulary grows without effort. Think about how children learn language. They don't start with university textbooks. They start with simple stories. Then, little by little, they move to more difficult books. English learners should do the same. Start easy. Build confidence. Then move forward. Remember, the goal is not to read difficult books. The goal is to improve your English. And sometimes, the easiest books can teach you the most. But reading alone is not enough. There is another habit that fluent English speakers develop, a habit that most learners completely ignore. Let's talk about that in the next tip. Tip number 3. Listen to English every single day. Now, some people may say, I already listen to English. But let me ask you something. Do you listen to understand? Or do you listen to learn? There's a big difference. Many learners listen to English once in a while. Maybe they watch a video today, then nothing for the next 3 days. Then they listen again. This approach doesn't work. Why? Because your brain learns language through repetition. The more English you hear, the more familiar it becomes. At first, English may sound too fast. You hear words, but they seem to blend together. You feel like native speakers are speaking at lightning speed. Don't worry. This happens to everyone. Even fluent speakers experienced this when they started learning. The secret is consistency. Listen a little every day. Not once a week. Not only when you feel motivated. Every single day. Even 15 minutes can make a difference. Listen while walking. Listen while cooking. Listen while exercising. Listen while traveling. Turn dead time into learning time. And here's another powerful tip. Don't worry if you don't understand every word. Many learners stop listening because they think they must understand everything. That's a mistake. When children learn their first language, they don't understand every word either. Yet, they continue listening, and slowly their understanding grows. Do the same with English. Focus on understanding the main idea. Not every single word, because the more you listen, the better your ears become. And one day, you'll notice something amazing. English that once sounded fast and confusing will suddenly start sounding clear and natural. That's when you know you're making progress. But there's one thing that can slow down your progress. A mistake that keeps thousands of learners stuck for years. And that brings us to tip number 4. Tip number 4. Stop being afraid of mistakes. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. Many English learners are not struggling because of grammar. They're not struggling because of vocabulary. They're struggling because of fear. The fear of making mistakes. The fear of sounding silly. the fear of being judged by others. And because of this fear, they stay silent. They wait for the perfect sentence. They wait for perfect grammar. They wait until they feel ready. But here's the truth. That day never comes. Because confidence doesn't come before speaking. Confidence comes from speaking. Think about a child learning to walk. Does the child walk perfectly on the first day? Of course not. The child falls again and again. But eventually, the child learns to walk. Now imagine if the child said, "I'll start walking when I can do it perfectly." That would never happen. English works exactly the same way. You improve by making mistakes. Every mistake teaches you something. Every correction helps you grow. Every conversation makes you stronger. In fact, many fluent English speakers still make mistakes. The difference is, they don't let mistakes stop them. They focus on communication, not perfection. So, the next time you speak English, don't ask yourself, "What if I make a mistake?" Ask yourself, "What if I learn something new today?" That simple change in mindset can transform your English journey. Because the biggest mistake in language learning is being too afraid to make one. Now, there's another habit that separates successful learners from struggling learners. And, honestly, this habit is so simple that most people underestimate its power. Let's move on to tip number 5. Tip number 5. Create a small English routine. Not a perfect routine. Not a difficult routine. A simple routine that you can follow every day. Here's what many learners do. They study English for 3 hours on Monday. Then they skip Tuesday, skip Wednesday, skip Thursday. And by the weekend, they've forgotten half of what they learned. The problem isn't effort. The problem is inconsistency. Learning English is like going to the gym. You don't become fit in one day. You become fit through regular practice. Even a little progress every day creates amazing results over time. Imagine 2 learners. The first studies English for 3 hours every Sunday. The second studies English for just 20 minutes every day. Who do you think will improve faster? In most cases, the second learner. Because language learning depends on regular exposure, not occasional effort. So create a simple daily routine. For example, read English for 10 minutes. Listen to English for 10 minutes. And speak English for 5 minutes. That's it. Simple, easy, and realistic. You don't need to study for hours. You just need to stay consistent. Because consistency beats motivation. There will be days when you don't feel motivated. There will be days when you're busy. There will be days when you feel tired. That's normal. Successful learners are not successful because they're always motivated. They're successful because they continue even when motivation disappears. And here's something interesting. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in 1 week, but underestimate what they can achieve in 1 year. Imagine improving your English just 1% every day. The results after a year would be incredible. So don't focus on becoming fluent next month. Focus on improving a little today, then a little tomorrow, and then a little the day after that. Those small improvements add up. Now, there's another habit that can dramatically improve your English. And the best part? You can start doing it today without spending any money. Let's talk about tip number 6. Tip number 6. Start thinking in English. Now this may sound difficult, but it's actually much easier than most people think. Many learners have the same habit. They think in their native language first. Then they translate their thoughts into English. And finally, they try to speak. This process takes time. That's why speaking often feels slow and stressful. Your brain is doing too much work. But fluent speakers don't translate every sentence. They think directly in English. And that's a skill you can develop too. Let's start with something simple. Look around your room. Can you name the things you see in English? Table, chair, window, door, book, phone. Now take it one step further. Instead of naming objects, describe them. For example, the window is open. My phone is on the table. I am sitting in my room. Simple sentences, but very powerful practice. Then, gradually, start talking about your day. What are you doing? What are you planning? What did you do yesterday? At first, your sentences may be short. That's perfectly fine. Remember, fluency is built one sentence at a time. The goal isn't perfect English. The goal is training your brain to think in English naturally. And the more you practice this habit, the faster your speaking becomes. One day, you'll notice something amazing. You'll start forming English sentences automatically, without translating, without struggling, without hesitation. And that's a major step toward fluency. But there's another technique that can speed up this process even more. In fact, many successful language learners use it every single day. Let's move on to tip number 7. This tip flows naturally and sets up tip number 7, speaking to yourself, shadowing technique, which is another strong retention point. Tip number 7. Talk to yourself in English. Yes, you heard that correctly. Talk to yourself. Now, before you think this sounds strange, let me explain. One of the biggest problems English learners face is this. They don't get enough speaking practice. They spend hours reading, hours listening, hours studying grammar, but very little time actually speaking. And then they wonder why speaking feels difficult. The truth is simple. Speaking is a skill, and like any skill, it improves through practice. But I don't have anyone to speak English with. If you've ever said that, you're not alone. Millions of learners feel the same way. But here's the good news. You always have a speaking partner available. Yourself. Start with simple conversations. Ask yourself questions. What am I doing right now? What are my plans for tomorrow? What did I learn today? Then answer those questions in English. Don't worry if your sentences aren't perfect. The goal is practice, not perfection. You can even describe your daily activities. For example, I'm making tea. I'm watching a video. I'm cleaning my room. Simple sentences, but powerful practice. Another great technique is called shadowing. Here's how it works. Listen to a native speaker. Pause the audio. Then repeat exactly what you heard. Try to copy the pronunciation, the rhythm, the tone, everything. At first, it may feel challenging, but over time, your speaking becomes smoother and more natural. And here's something important. When you speak English regularly, you stop fearing English. English becomes familiar, comfortable, natural. And that's exactly what fluency feels like. Now we're moving to a tip that changed the way many learners study English. A tip that can save you months of frustration. Let's continue with tip number 8. Tip number 8. Stop trying to memorize everything. This is one of the biggest mistakes English learners make. They see a new word. They write it down. They memorize it. Then they see another word. And another. And another. Soon, they have hundreds of words in a notebook. But when it's time to speak, they can't remember most of them. Why? Because our brains are not designed to remember information that we never use. Think about it. How many phone numbers do you remember today? Probably very few. Why? Because you don't use them regularly. The same thing happens with English vocabulary. Words that you memorize but never use eventually disappear. But words that you read, hear, write, and speak stay in your memory much longer. That's why smart learners focus on repetition, not memorization. When you learn a new word, try to use it several times. Create a sentence with it. Say it out loud. Write it in your journal. Use it in a conversation. The more ways you use a word, the stronger it becomes in your memory. And here's another secret. You don't need to know every English word. Even native speakers don't know every word. Focus on learning the most useful words and phrases first. Master the common vocabulary. Then gradually expand your knowledge. Remember, a small active vocabulary is more powerful than a huge passive vocabulary. It's better to know 1,000 words that you can actually use than 10,000 words that you constantly forget. Now, let's move to a tip that might surprise you, because many learners completely ignore it. Yet, it can dramatically improve your English confidence. Let's talk about tip number 9. Tip number 9. Keep an English journal. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. I don't like writing. Or maybe, I don't have enough time. But, hear me out. This simple habit can improve your English faster than you think. Why? Because writing forces you to use the English you already know. When you're listening, you can guess meanings. When you're reading, you can skip difficult parts. But when you're writing, you have to create English yourself. And that's where real learning happens. You don't need a fancy notebook. You don't need perfect grammar. You don't even need to write a lot. Just write a few sentences every day. For example, today I woke up at 7 o'clock. I had breakfast with my family. Then I watched an English video. That's it. Simple, easy, and effective. As your confidence grows, you can write longer entries. You can describe your goals, your experiences, your opinions, your dreams, and something amazing will happen. you'll start noticing gaps in your English. Words you don't know, phrases you need, grammar points you should improve. Your journal becomes a mirror. It shows you exactly what to learn next. And over time, you'll be surprised when you look back and see how much you've improved. But now we've reached the final tip. And honestly, this may be the most important tip in the entire video. Because without it, all the other tips become much harder to follow. Let's move to tip number 10. Tip number 10. Believe that you can become fluent. I know this may sound like simple motivation, but it's much more than that. Because the way you think about yourself affects the way you learn. Many English learners tell themselves things like, "My English is weak. I'm too old to learn. I can't speak fluently. I'm not good at languages." And after repeating these thoughts for months or even years, they start believing them. But let me ask you a question. Were you born speaking your native language? Of course not. You learned it, step by step, word by word, mistake by mistake. So why should English be any different? The truth is, fluent English speakers are not special. They are not geniuses. They are not born with a secret talent. They simply followed the process long enough. They kept going when progress felt slow. They kept practicing when others gave up. And, eventually, their hard work paid off. Now think about your own journey. Maybe your English isn't where you want it to be today. That's okay. What matters is that you're improving. Every new word you learn, every page you read, every English video you watch, every sentence you speak is moving you forward. Progress may feel slow from day to day, but if you stay consistent, the results can be life-changing. 1 year from now, you could be having conversations in English, reading books with confidence, watching English videos without subtitles, and speaking without fear. But it all starts with one decision. The decision to keep going. Even when it's difficult. Even when progress feels slow. Even when you make mistakes. Because every fluent English speaker was once a beginner, and every expert was once a learner. So, never underestimate what you can achieve. Believe in yourself. Trust the process. And keep learning. Now, before you leave, I want you to answer one question in the comments. Which of these 10 tips are you going to start using today? Let me know below. I read your comments, and I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who is also learning English. Thank you so much for watching. Keep practicing. Keep improving. And I'll see you in the next video. Until then, happy English learning!